Sam. Today I'm going to be talking about my August wrap-up, what I've read in August. I feel like August was actually a very good reading month, so I'm excited to share some of my titles. So, without further ado, let's get to it. The first book that I read in August was Not the Girl You Marry, which is a sort of romance, rom-com-y romance typo book. This is one that I read in audiobook form because I felt like July was like a very slow reading month for me. I like really fizzled out. I did not complete the Reading Rush challenge, which turned out to be a whole thing anyways, so like not too disappointed about that. But I like at the beginning of the month I was just sort of like trying to get back into the swing of things. I really liked the premise of this book. Basically it's like how to lose a guy in 10 days retelling, almost to the letter in terms of setup. It is gender swapped, so the male protagonist is the journalist who's trying to write the article about how to lose a girl in 10 days. So I thought that was really cute. I ended up on Goodreads not rating this one because it's fairly new. It doesn't have a lot of reviews yet, and my star rating system is sort of mean. I guess sort of the real top of my star rating system is a 4 because I really reserve 5 stars for books that I consider life-changing in some way or like really like deeply affect the way I think about certain topics. Basically for this sort of wrap-up thing you can just pretend 5 doesn't exist or add a star to every book. Because I'm not going to change my system 10 years in, but I do feel really bad when I rate a book 3, and 3 means that I really liked it, but to everybody else it's like, oh no, terrible. I don't know. So yeah, I basically, in the end, I did not think that the execution was very good. I guess it was the characters weren't actually very memorable, I thought, in the end, especially the male lead. I thought he was a little bit blah. And also, I'm like, I've been reading a lot of romance in the last couple months because I think just a genre where you know things are going to work out has been very comforting, but at the same time I don't actually like it that much, so I feel like I keep on reading romances and being like, yeah, it was fine. So that's not really the book's fault, but, you know, premise awesome. The next book I read was Passage, and this one I really liked. I did not expect to get like so into it. I just sort of got it out of the library on a lark and ended up reading it over like 2.5 days, which is pretty good for me. I'm not a fast reader and it is a long book. But basically it's a post-apocalyptic novel about vampires, but they're sort of like vampire zombies. They reminded me more of zombies than vampires in general, except they move very fast, so that's not classically zombie-esque. But basically it follows this young girl, Amy, who is dropped off at a nunnery. What's it called? Where nuns live? Convent. She's dropped off at a convent, and she's like vaguely on the run from the government. It's a hard book to describe. I highly recommend it if you're into like dark dystopian novels. It does sort of like traffic in a lot of the tropes, but I feel like it was written in 2010, and I feel like it was probably one of these books that was like instrumental to developing these tropes that have since become a little bit cliche. So yeah, I am excited about reading the next book. I do think that this book could have been, it had sort of like 3 major parts, so it could have been 3 books on its own. I enjoyed the origin story portion the most, sort of like the first third, but I'm excited to see where they go from where they ended up. This was a great non-description of this book, but anyways, I rated it 4 stars, so I loved it. The next book I read was The Color of Magic, which is Terry Pratchett's first Discworld book. I've spent a long time trying to figure out, like, where to even start with the Discworld books, and then I was finally like, okay, do you know what? Book number 1, here we come. And I really enjoyed it. Like, it made me laugh out loud a number of times. There's like so much wordplay and so many like wordy jokes that I think that they probably don't translate very well to audio in general. Basically, the first Discworld book is about the wizard Rincewind, who is sort of a failed wizard because he only knows one spell, and it's a very powerful spell, but he can't like learn anything else. So most of the time he's like going around being like, cool, cool, cool. But he gets roped into showing around the tourist, which is, his name is Two Flower. So Two Flower came from a different, like, discworld nation state or whatever. And it doesn't quite have the hang of the exchange rate, so it's throwing gold around everywhere, and creating lots of trouble. And it was a very good book. There is a lot of adventure. I honestly feel like with this book, the point was not the plot. Some interesting stuff happens. You fall in love with the characters. There is some, like, ambient 80s style sexism in there, but we're just ignoring it for now because we're assuming that the series develops and it's fine, hopefully. Yes, cool. So I rated this one 4 stars also, so very good. I then read Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit by Jeanette Winterson. This is a book that I read. So this book is a coming-of-age story about an adopted girl who was adopted into a very evangelical family, and it's sort of about her relationship with her mother, adoptive mother, I guess, and her coming to terms with her own sexuality. It's sort of known as like a pseudo-autobiographical novel with like fairy tale elements woven in. So I thought it was really good. I liked her coming of age story a lot. I really liked the sort of humor with which she approached the sort of darker topics in this book. Like I think that that's like a really effective way to talk about things that are important, is to, you know, wrap in a little bit of humor. Basically, I wish she just sort of told it straight rather than like trying to make it more experimental or something. So I rated this 3 stars. Would highly recommend. I think I'm going to try to read The Passion, which I've heard from a number of people is like their favorite novel ever. So, you know, I'm not like writing off Jeanette Winterson or anything. After Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit, I read Get a Life, Chloe Brown, which I've heard a lot about on BookTube. What to say about Get a Life? I think, again, I did not rate this on Goodreads because I just feel sort of bad rating books that I know I just don't like the genre. And it's like, why do you read books where you don't like the genre? And it's like, sometimes I just need to like listen to some people doing some stuff while I'm in lab doing stuff I don't want to do. So basically, Get a Life, Chloe Brown is about Chloe, who is a web designer with fibromyalgia, so she has chronic pain, and it's sort of about her love to hate, or I always do that, hate to love romance with the super in her building. I really, 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 really liked the representation of somebody with a chronic pain condition. You can tell that Talia Hibbert, the author, has familiarity with this topic. She, like the descriptions of how Chloe has to manage her pain and her disability to, you know, get through a normal day was like really insightful. So that I loved that aspect. I do not hate to love romances anyways, because I feel like a lot of the time, like either the hate part is too weak and you're like, why do you guys even hate each other? These are dumb reasons. Get over yourselves, which is sort of the case with this book. Or the reason for hate is like way too big, and then once they start to love each other, you're like, how could you forgive that? All that being said, I feel like the execution was great. Again, I would recommend it if you like romances with those tropes. The next book that I read was The Tao of Pooh. I gave this one 2 stars, which in my book is like a good old meh. Like, I think I would have gotten a lot more out of reading a Wikipedia article about Taoism and then reading like the original Pooh books, like The Adventures of Pooh or whatever they're called. But as it is, it was like somewhat cute. I've forgotten all of the Taoist lessons that I was trying to impart by now. It was fine. Moving on. After The Tao of Pooh, I read Truly Devious, which is a young adult mystery book. I really liked this one, except now I'm not remembering a lot about it. I did read a lot this month, so that's fun. Truly Devious. Oh, Truly Devious. Truly Devious. Haha. Okay, Truly Devious is about a high school age girl who is accepted into this prestigious boarding school in Vermont. And the reason that she wants to go there is that there's a cold case murdery type thing that happened at the school about 100 years ago, and she thinks she can go and figure out who killed the founder's wife and who kidnapped his daughter. The book sort of read a little bit younger than I think it was meant to. I think it's supposed to be young adult. In the first half, it was definitely reading middle grade to me, which I do not mind because I like middle grade a lot. But then they threw in a romance element, which is, I guess, necessary to YA nowadays. You gotta have some making out. I sound like an old lady. I don't care about it. The murder mystery element, it did not tie up very well. I'm sort of thinking about if I should bump this down to 2. Because, in retrospect, you know how sometimes, the way a book sits with you afterwards can really change how you feel about it? I feel like my star ratings can move around for months after I read a book. I mean, I did very much enjoy it while I was reading it, but now that I'm thinking back on it, it just wasn't actually very memorable. I can't decide. Maybe it's a 2, but I recommend it. So maybe it's a 3. Okay, cool. We'll just leave it at that. The next book I read was The Likeness, which is another book that I was supposed to read during the reading rush, but hello, did not do that. The Likeness is the second book in Tana French's Dublin Murder Squad series, and I loved the first book. This one is about Cass, who's the partner of the protagonist, the main protagonist in the first Murder Squad book, and she gets sent in on an undercover mission after somebody who looks a lot like her gets killed, and they're trying to figure out who killed this woman. I think it's the premise of this book that maybe made me a little less excited than the first book, because there was a lot of disbelief to be suspended here, but Tana French is just amazing at what she does, sets the scenes perfectly, is really great at describing interactive, interpersonal tension, I guess. So I really loved this. I feel like if you like that sort of British gritty crime TV drama type of thing, you should definitely look into Tana French, because she it's that vibe, and they're very good. So this one got a 4 stars. Maybe the reason I didn't like this as much as In the Woods is Cass, the main character of this one, was definitely my favorite character from the first book, and I think maybe Tana French also felt that way. I think that she wasn't able to develop out the character as much because she liked her too much or something. Does that happen? I think that happens sometimes. So anyways, I'm excited to read The Faithful Place, which is the next one. I'm just into my series this year, which is unusual. Also, where's the nonfiction on this list? That's another thing. After The Likeness, I read Persuasion by Jane Austen. I have read Persuasion before. This was a reread. Persuasion is about a woman named Anne who fell in love with a young man when she was about 19, but rejected his marriage proposal because of pressure from her family and from her sort of mentor friend, pseudo-mother person. So that happens, and she is now, I think, 26 or 27, still unmarried, definitely, in Jane Austen times, has become an old maid or whatever, and is, she's just sort of, generally in a little bit of a bad situation because, I mean, nothing truly bad happens in Jane Austen, right? But, the times being what they were, she's, sort of stuck with her shitty family and doing the best she can, being a nice, generous, thoughtful person surrounded by people who do not have those positive attributes, I guess. Oh my god, I forget the guy's names. General, what was his name? Thomas? No. Dude that proposed to her when they were 19 comes back and is an admiral in the Navy or whatever. I guess I won't spoil it. But it's a second chances book. So anyways, rambled on long enough about this. I think that it was the book that I needed at that moment because I just really felt like a book where somebody is struggling quietly with a bad situation, because I think that is like what we're all doing right now. It's like not like horribly bad for everybody. Like there's definitely some people who have like horribly bad things happening to them right now, but like the top of the scale is like pretty a little bit bad. So just like dealing with that with grace right now, I just felt like a book that would address that. Not even address that. Okay, sorry, my brain is done. Persuasion gets 3 stars. Woo! After Persuasion, I read The Light Fantastic, which is the second book in the Discworld series. And again, I would super recommend it. I thought it was very good. It's just like a little adventure, lots of humor. It's a little nuts. You become very attached to this like luggage. The luggage is my favorite character out of all the characters in Discworld that I've met, which I realize there are going to be a lot more as I go through this series. It was just a romp. I gave it 4 stars. After that, I read Coraline by Neil Gaiman, and I also really, really, really liked this book. I feel like Neil Gaiman is just so good at like making timeless stories, I guess. Like, I feel like maybe that's a little bit of a cliche to say, but I think that you could, like, read Coraline and be like, oh, this was written in the 1930s, or, oh, this is, like, a fairy tale that has been passed down and smoothed out by many, many tellers, or something like that. But he wrote it, so that's cool. I don't know. It's basically about a girl in a house. There's a door that leads to this sort of, like, alternate reality apartment where her parents are super creepy, and creepiness ensues. I think this is the sort of book that I would have been way too scared to read when I was a child, but here I am, 28, and I'm able to deal with it. So I gave this book 4 stars. I love Neil Gaiman. I think I like his sort of like children's book stuff more than his adult book stuff. I need to retry American Gods. And then the last book that I've read in August is The Bookish Life of Nina Hill, which is basically about a woman living in Los Angeles who is very set in her ways. She works at a bookstore. She is like a super intense planner. She has like things that she goes to every night. She ends up meeting a guy, and she needs to find room for him. I guess it would be classified as women's fiction, but it had like some of the best descriptions of like feeling overwhelmed or coping with anxiety in unhealthy ways that I've heard. It felt like very relatable in a lot of ways. I do think that it is a bit of a not a lot happens books, so I wasn't like super compelled by the plot, but I did really enjoy it. I really liked the characters. So I gave it, how much did I give it? I gave it 3 stars. So yeah, basically that's what I've read in August. There's still a couple more days, and I'm in the middle of an audiobook now, so I might read another one by the end of August, but I'll just like pretend it's in September. It'll be fine. Overall, that's 12 books. I think that is probably the most I've ever read in a single month, although I have a hard time actually knowing that, because before this year I did not consistently count audiobooks as books I've read, mainly because of this like picking up audiobooks I don't actually like very much problem. I think that is something that I want to like actively deal with. Anyways, let me know how your August reading month went, or just how it went in general, and I guess I will see you next week. I need the camera to be closer next time. I think you should be like here, right? Like this is better. Whatever. We filmed the whole thing already.